o'clock morning sessions. At 11:30, we'll move our bodies to a community dance break led by Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance. Our early afternoon sessions will begin at 12 p.m., followed by a nourishing lunch at 1:30. At this time, you may also explore our exhibitor hall, where we will host the virtual expo showcase. Welcome to the Dance NYC 2022 Symposium, Life Cycles, Livelihoods, Legacies. We will be with you shortly. Today's schedule. After this morning's warm welcome and wake up, we will now begin our 10 o'clock morning sessions. At 11:30, we'll move our bodies to a community dance break led by Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance. Our early afternoon sessions will begin at 12 p.m., followed by a nourishing lunch at 1:30. At this time, you may also explore our exhibitor hall, where we will host the virtual expo showcase. At 2:30, we will begin our late afternoon sessions, followed by a 4:15 community daily debrief, where all attendees are encouraged to attend and discuss the day's activities. At 5 o'clock, head over to our exhibitor hall to explore our second virtual expo showcase of the day. And at 6 o'clock, we will present our keynote presentation. Accessibility. ASL interpretation and live captioning will be provided for today's session. A stream-to-text link will be posted in the chat and participation guide for access to the live transcription. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSymp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSymp2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Community guidelines. Based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion, we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity. Not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Some features not to miss. Build your agenda of sessions. Connect with other attendees. Join community conversations. Visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium digital program book. We are happy to be in community with you. Thanks for joining.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sophie Vischer. I am a cisgender woman and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm calling in from Wappinger, Muncie, Lenape land, also known as Manhattan. I am a white woman with brown curly hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing clear glasses and a cream sweater. On the wall behind me are some posters of fruit. I just wanted to start by thanking you for joining us all at the completely digital 2022 Symposium held on the Whova platform. As we are at the mercy of technology, we wanted to remind you that there may be some delays, sound issues, technical difficulties, and changing circumstances that might occur during our time together. We invite you to extend us and each other some patience and grace when we're working with our technology. Second of all, we have ASL interpreters from SignNexus and closed captioning services provided by the Visicardi Center that will be available throughout the session. A stream-to-text link will also be available and posted in the chat for further reference. We will also post speaker information in the description below and under the speakers module on the left side of your Whova web app or on the menu of your Whova mobile app. This information is also available on our website. Third, feel free to post comments you want to share with the community in the chat section to the right of this event room. Dance NYC moderators will be interacting with you there. For this session, the panelists have decided to hold a short Q&A at the end of the session. However, please feel free to post your comments and reflections in the chat for the community's benefit throughout the discussion. After the session ends, there will be a session follow-up in the community section of Whova where you can continue these important conversations. Lastly, we hope that you will help us amplify these conversations and keep them going. So repost, tag us, and share your takeaways on Twitter. We're at DanceNYC. Instagram, we're at dance.nyc. And on Facebook, we're dance/NYC using the hashtag DanceSymp, S-Y-M-P. And now, finally, we enter culture bearers and traditions for posterity. Folkloric and traditional dance practitioners offer insights on the strength of their practices for posterity, articulating the ways they participate in the wider dance field and how they pass on their traditions. How are these artists perceived, supported, and included, and on what terms? Now welcoming our moderator, Ph.D. guest professor of West African dance at the Juilliard School, Darian Parker. Welcome, Darian.
Hello, thank you so much for that introduction, Sophie. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this panel today. My name is Darian Parker. I identify as a cisgender male. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an African-American man. I'm wearing a light purple button-down shirt. On my walls, in the background, you can see various astrophysical phenomena like the Andromeda Galaxy and a purple and blue nebula and the planet of Saturn. I'm calling in today from Manhattan, which is the indigenous land of the Lenape people. I'm very, very happy to be the moderator for this panel today, which is entitled Culture Bearers and Traditions of Posterity. As we go throughout this panel, I want us to think about all of these words that are a part of this title. For instance, the word culture, which is exceptionally important. It's the thing that differentiates us as human beings from other species. It involves the ability to learn things, to master various skills, and then to pass that information on to the next generation, forming, a bond of continuity that extends the entire history of humanity. So when we think about culture bearers, right, this gets right to the essence, I feel, of what it means to be human. And all of our esteemed panelists today, in one form or another, are culture bearers. These are the individuals who have taken on the responsibility of bearing culture, of mastering skills, of learning information, disseminating that to the world, and then ensuring a bridge of continuity for future generations. So we have culture bearers. We also have traditions, which is a part of the title. And, let's think, well, what is a tradition? It's something that, is conventionalized, knowledge and wisdom. It itself, implies a sense of continuity between the past, the present, and the future. We often think of traditions as things that do not change. However, we might ask ourselves, well, is there room for an improvisatory impulse even inside of what we consider to be tradition? Is there room for creativity inside of tradition? So I want us to think about that as well. And then, we have the term posterity, the generation or what comes after. And I think that it's always important, I think what it means to be human, is to be future oriented in many ways. And so it's always important to think about how traditions connect to the future, how the practices that we engage in now are connecting to future generations and the world, essentially that we want to see. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our panelists onto the platform to introduce themselves. I will. We have Sewaa Codrington. We have Sambamoorthi. We have Paula Sanchez, and we have Sachiyo Ito. And so I'll now hand it over to them to introduce themselves. Let's see, beginning with Sewaa Codrington. And let's see, Sewaa, I think you're currently muted.
Okay, there I am. Okay, good morning. My name is Sewaa Codrington. I identify as a cisgender female. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm an African Caribbean woman, first generation born in America. I'm calling in from the indigenous land Navatman, which is a part of the area in which the Brooklyn community of Bedford-Stuyvesant now exists, which was by the 1960s, the second largest African-American community in the United States. I have coarse brown, tightly twisted hair. I'm wearing gold earrings, black and white glasses, a mudcloth dress that is cream in color with black, pink, and brown design. And I'm in my living room, sitting on my couch. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sewaa. Now, let's see, I'll pass it to Sahi.
Thanks, Darian. My name is Sahasra Sambamoorthi, but most people call me Sahi, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm calling in from the Lenape land, also Manhattan, and I'm a brown woman with a long curly black hair, and I'm wearing a Kashmiri scarf wrapped around myself and some Indian jumiki silver jewelry. Behind me, I'm in the studio, and you see large brass lamps and clay pots off to my left, and on to my right, various props from our productions, pillars painted black and gold.
Okay, thank you, Sahi. Now I will pass it to Paula.
Good morning. My name is Paula Sánchez-Kucukozer. I identify as a cisgender woman, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am Mexican. I have salt and pepper hair, straight hair. I'm wearing an embroidered blouse with colorful flowers and a headband with a flower on the top. I am on Lenape land, also known as Queens, New York. And behind me, there's a wall with bookshelves and Mexican crafts. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Paula. And finally, Sachiyo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sachiyo Ito. The pronoun for me is she, her. I'm from Tokyo, Japan. I am wearing a traditional dress kimono. The background here is a typical shoji screen of a Japanese house, and calling in from Chelsea. Is this Darian? I thought we were going to have 5 minutes introduction. I have prepared for it. Is it the later time or now, or I am a little bit confused? I'm sorry. Then what's happening to it? Everybody just introduction about background and so on. I have a long, I timed as 5 minutes and then answers to your 11 questions.
Okay, no worries. No, we're going to get right into that. We're going to have an opportunity for that. So
okay, I wait.
No problem. Good question. Thank you. All right, thank you, Sachiyo. So we jumped the gun a little bit. That's okay. We're going to get right into this. Before we get into any specific questions from our panelists, I'd like for everyone just to get a sense of who you are, the work that you've done, the work that you do, why it's important to you. I want to just open the floor up for that because, just in researching all of your careers, you have done such vast and amazing things. And I really want, all under the rubric of folklore and tradition. And I really want our audience to get a sense of who you are and what you do. So perhaps we can go in the same order in which we started, beginning with Sewaa.
Okay. Thank you. This is Sewaa, and I have been in the arts practically my entire life. However, it was organic in the beginning, and without going into a lot of detail yet as to how I got there, I have been in the African arts for over 40 years. And I have an organization, a cultural arts organization, which is 30 years old this past year and going into our 31st year. I do extensive research within the African diaspora, from African American folklore, especially my forte is traditional African dance, mainly from the old Mali Empire. Predominantly, but not only. I also, study in various places around the world. I've, been throughout the African diaspora. I've studied in Brazil, in the West Indies. I've studied in other places in Central and South America, and I've studied in Africa. And basically, the work that we do is we educate. I disseminate the information through classes as well as through productions which we call edutainment, where we are educating through entertainment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, Sewaa. And for those of you who didn't get the name of Sewaa's organization, her company it's KowTeff, African Dance Company. And I have personally had the privilege of studying with Sewaa. So this is really an honor for me to be on this panel today. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, Sahi.
Sewaa, I love the idea of edutainment, but Sahi here. And I run Navatman, and I work in the South Asian / Indian performing arts. It's a broad umbrella to say because there are so many styles of Indian dance and music, probably upwards of hundreds, but I work within what is currently categorized as the classical styles. Kathak, Bharatanatyam, Odissi, Kuchipudi. And the style that I'm most proficient in and that I've been in for the field for the last 30 years is called Bharatanatyam. I'm learning that style for 30 plus and teaching for over 20. And our organization, Navatman, runs classes. We also do productions, and we have a resident performing dance company and music collective as well. Does that cover, I think, the extent of what you were looking for, Darian?
Sure. Yeah, just whatever, whatever you would like to share. I know all of you have done so much. It's impossible to put it all into a brief introduction. But, I'm sure more will come out as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next, Paula.
Hi, this is Paula. The style of dance that I practice is called Song Haracho, and it's a very regional style of Mexican folk from the Gulf of Mexico. It's original from rural communities, and I learned it here in New York about 13 years ago when I had been living here in New York for a while. I had already been a performer of other styles of Mexican folk, and I discovered this style here in New York. So that's how I became engaged with it. I'm mostly an educator and a cultural promoter, along with other wonderful women here in New York. We organize an annual festival of this style of music, Son Jarocho. We constantly try to bring masters from Mexico to teach us and share their art with us. And we organize workshops and events and performances, either with these masters or with local groups. I am also a founding member of a group called Son Pecadores, where we perform this style of music. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paula. And finally, Sachiyo.
It is an honor to be here as a speaker at the symposium. Also, I feel like it is such a coincidence I am at the session for the cultural bearers, because this is my 50th year since I have performed and taught in the United States. So by now, I hope to be able to contribute to the theme. I must bow to how fortunate I have been to be able to perform all these years in my profession, supported by my friends, colleagues, and students. Literally, I began my work as grassroots work here with public school workshops and demonstration in early 70s. People in the United States didn't know much about Japanese culture. And then 70s, 80s, 90s, I toured around the States, up and down, east, west, including rural area. One newspaper called me a kabuki in the Rockies. Well, since my style of dance comes from kabuki theater, my mission has been to introduce the art and culture of Japan to the world outside of Japan. But I soon realized I cannot accomplish my mission without knowing other dance cultures here. So that desire led me to my MN Ph.D. and well, academic teaching helped in my teaching, but teaching, choreographing, collaborating with other great artists let me broaden my vision and led me to an intimate program with the audience, between artists and audience in 1998. It's an ongoing series of programs that reached 70 programs last year. The aim is to introduce the art and culture of Japan using specific examples, aspects that had an impact of Japanese dance. Over the years, however, I expanded the focus to include comparisons with other dance styles and cultures to show that beyond barriers of ethnicity and cultures, the arts all strive to the same ends, despite differences in appearances, cultural expressions. Humanity shares the same in purposes and goals. My desire from early age was kind of been to introduce exquisitely subtle beauty of Japanese classical dance. In order to expand my perspective in doing so, my academic study helped. And training from childhood to my frequent trips to Japan for 66 years helped. And also for that mission, I founded my NPO, a dance group, performing group, and the school, 41 years ago, yes, 1981. We served to the community and the city of New York in recent decades. But looking back, since that is more grassroots work I have done in the 70s, although 90s, 80s, I was more focusing in higher education as an agent at colleges in New York in another state. Being a person in the modern age, I have choreographed dances and created modern works based on Japanese traditional aesthetics and my classical training. Because I believe dance is a vehicle of human voice and reflecting the now and the here. I cannot emphasize the influence of one greatest spiritual teacher, in the 20th century, Thich Nhat Hanh, who recently passed away. I was inspired by his teaching, but not only that, but by his poetry, which helped me to create humanitarian works and develop my choreography with poetry. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Sachiyo. So as you out there, in Zoom world, can see, our panelists have, such rich experiences, and listening to all of you speak, there are so many questions that come to my mind, and so I'm sure there's so many that come to your mind as well. So as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, feel free to send your questions in, and there will be an opportunity at the end to field some of those questions. But one of the things that I want to pick up on that runs continuous, throughout all of our panelists is this idea of education. Many of you, in one form or another, see what you do, or have taken on the responsibility of educating others through your art. Educating them about a specific culture or your art form. And one question, I always have, or one thing I always think about, when I'm doing lecture demonstrations, etc., I often wonder, how are people receiving this? Are they receptive, to what it is that, I have to offer, as a traditional based artist? And so I'd like for you all just to speak a little bit more to this idea of education, the centrality of education, or educating others to what you do as a traditional artist. And whoever wants to begin, feel free. There's no specific order.
I can start. Hi, this is Paula. Well, in the tradition that I practice, there's two aspects of it. There is a performance practice where you are on stage with your group, showing to an audience. And there's also the community experience, because this tradition started as a communal experience in rural places in the Gulf of Mexico. So because it comes from rural communities, there is an element of participation from the audience in the dance that we practice. So whenever we perform or present this tradition to different audiences, they get very invested in it because they realize they can contribute to the actual dancing. You learn a few steps, and you are in. You're part of the party. You're part of the celebration. You're dancing. So it's very well received in whatever we have performed, and because of that, because it has an interactive element, and people get excited about it. So in the case of what I do is has been widely accepted. Now the other part of it is that Mexico is well known for many different styles of dancing. Most people, when they think of Mexican music, they think of mariachi and the big, colorful dresses flowing all over the stage. But what I do is a little bit more subdued. You are stationary. You don't move your arms so much. It's considered a percussive dance. You are part of the music more than dancing itself. So that's very different for audiences. And that's why we have to educate people about it. We have to tell them the story. We have to explain the social, the cultural context, the functions of the dance, explain that they can join us. And many times they do. And that's how we hook them up and make them, keep the tradition expanding here in New York and the East Coast and all over the world, actually. So in the case of what I do, Son Jarocho, it has been very well received and is becoming increasingly popular, especially in the United States.
Oh, that's excellent. I love that. It's so interesting to hear you talk about the interactive dimension of the dance, the percussive element of the dance. Especially having done a little, background research on, that form of dance. We know that from that in that region. it's a kind of a synthesis of Spanish, indigenous, and also African people there. And, we know that, with indigenous and especially African forms, the interactivity, is a very important element. This emphasis on community, the emphasis on the percussion. And I love what you say about kind of like the dancer becoming the music, to some extent. That's really at the core of African dance as well, which is what I do. But thank you for sharing those. Who else wants to pick up on this idea of education and its importance to what you do? Okay, Sasha.
Yes, in this scene, we are the supposed cultural bearers. So as someone who has elected to convey the Japanese culture in those who are not familiar with it, and who wants to know more about it, we go on. This is my duty to clearly convey the tenet of the culture through my medium of dance. So I often say, actually, I have a program, Japanese culture through dance. I believe dance is a mirror that reflects the various cultural elements, including history, geography, how they are, the social life, and language, literature, and religion, and it's countless. What has nurtured this dance form? And the other way, we can talk about these cultures. So all of you here go to public school or private school to teach youngsters with a map and with all these kimonos so that they can wear to show this is the Japanese way. And we have this dance room and bring the fans, and this is the dance, how beautiful it is. I want you to appreciate this. And then when you get home, think about your own culture. And then maybe you can compare how wonderful that is too, different. But we want to appreciate other culture, other people. You may have Asian friends or somebody you never speak the language, but you can begin to understand like a little window through dance and also reflect yourself and talk to your mom and then, oh, this is my culture. This is wonderful. I have to, keep up and then treasure. So that is for youngsters. Higher education, more intellectual way of PowerPoint, and this is the history, how our legacy has changed, transmitted, because we are human beings. The challenges have been here, and we have to, change, but with our creativity but the core of legacy, the tradition, it doesn't change. And we can, from younger generation, higher education, and also the seniors, they have had so much life experience. We can touch upon what about Japan, and also your results, your life experience as a senior, and you can appreciate this literature, the poetry, rather than youngsters. I want you to understand, and then bring your own poetry, and something like, then we can do the interaction in our dance education. Oh, sorry, that's.
Wow. Oh, thank you. Oh, excellent. Oh my God. There's so many themes, to pick up on here. I really, really love, the part about the fact that what you do is actually encouraging other people to have appreciation, for other cultures. I think that is so important. I mean, if we're going to have a world that's harmonious in any way, that has to be an element of it. Teaching young people how to appreciate, other cultures. And I think that just really emphasizes the importance of the work that you all do, as culture bearers and, educators, through the arts. All right. So this is great. Who else wants to pick up on this idea of the importance of education to what you do?
I would like to say something about that. This is Sewaa here speaking. And one of the things that was just said was that the importance of appreciating the various cultures around the world. And I think before you can start to do that, you have to be able to appreciate your own culture. And as the Honorable Marcus Garvey stated, that a people without knowledge of their history and culture is like a tree without roots. And for the African diaspora population, especially those of us who were brought to the New World, the so-called New World, the Western world, where we came by force. A lot of things were actually erased from our memories intentionally. They were systemically erased. So there is so much that we don't know about ourselves that, for me, education is extremely important for us, because even in multicultural education, you have to start with self. And if you don't know who you are, it becomes very problematic, knowing who you are and having pride in who you are and the achievements and your history and your arts and your dance, your culture, your foods, all of these things. If you don't understand that or don't know that, it has a lot to do with your self-esteem. And it also has a lot to do with how you move forward in life. So for me, it was very important for me to do the research to find out who we are as a people, and to be able to disseminate that to not only our children, but our adults who really, we don't know who we are. We don't know a lot of times, for example, we don't even know what to call ourselves. Are we Black? Are we Negro? There's no Black land, no colored land, not even an African-American land. We don't even embrace the fact that we are African people. And so it's very important to me to be able to pass down the culture, which is the blood that runs through our veins, and empowers us and allows us to be who we are, and then to also be able to share it with other people so that they can understand our culture as well, because there's been a lot of stereotypes about what African culture is. When I was growing up, the only thing that you saw that was African was Tarzan, with people with bones through their nose. And, it was not a realistic, view of the richness of our African culture. So for me, it's very important to pass on this information and use the African diaspora arts as a tool of empowerment.
This is, I'm sorry, Sewaa, you were going to say something else?
No, I was going to say, okay. And I'm finished with that thought.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you so much for those powerful words. I love your invocation of Garvey here, which is extremely important. And when we think about African diasporic culture, and that erasure, as you call it, of memory, it presents this other fascinating issue for me, when thinking specifically about what it has meant to me and a lot of my peers to study African dance. My first teacher around this model, or how we normally think about education, my first teacher in Zinga Kamara used to tell us that I'm not teaching you anything new. I'm just simply helping you to remember what it is that you already know. And as a young person hearing that, in my mind, it was just, that's just an elder saying something profound. I didn't really understand the full import of it until I started going deeper into my craft. Then I realized, oh, yes, Yes, this is to a certain extent, okay, some of this knowledge is already here. Um, and, I would just be curious to know um, how we're even thinking about, what it means to learn. How much of it is kind of an acquisition of things, outside yourself. How much of it, is a journey of self-exploration or self-excavation. I think in my case, but see, maybe someone wants to pick up on that. I don't know, but I'll just put it out there. Let's see. Would anyone else like to speak to this more general topic of education and its centrality to your art form? Yes, Sahi.
And just a short sort of thing. I think for all of us, we don't come in saying, I'm a cultural bearer of tradition. It's something that after years of experience, people start to see you that way. And the big thing about that, I think, is once people start to see you that way, you are the representative. You kind of naturally have to take on the position in the community of passing these traditions down. So education becomes primary. You can't let it go, because how many other people have the knowledge that you've been gaining over the last 30, 40, 50 years? And so it just becomes something you have to do, whether it looks like education in public schools, whether it looks like a school you run, whether it looks like training, mentorship for the first generation, or even performing. I think it becomes a central aspect of what we do overall, whether we choose to do it or not, like whether we choose to fall into that position or not. But that's kind of what I wanted to say. And I think, Darian, you were bringing up this idea of self-exploration. And we're all in this really unique place and time now where it's become very obvious to us the post effects of colonialism. And so when you're talking about self-exploration and self-excavation, I would guess, and I posed this question also curiously, I'm now looking at my field and saying, how much of what I was taught is a reaction to colonialism, and how much now do I have to go further and peel back? So that self-excavation and exploration that our students are doing, we're continuing to do to figure out what it is that we are passing down, what is the most relevant aspects of what we do, and how do we even find ourselves before all of this has happened to our art forms and our situations overall. I know it happened both to African-American art forms. It certainly happened in India to our art forms as well. I don't know as much about Mexican and Japanese art forms, but I'd love to understand more. That's my conclusion on my thoughts on the matter.
All right, so that is a great question, and I want us to continue, with that theme. I think it's something that we all, to a certain extent have experience in. Is this? It's come up, in the conversation so far, kind of the effects of colonialism. Certainly. Um, Slavery, in the United States or in the American context, was a part of this whole colonial enterprise. And so, and in many respects, the art forms that we are working in, there's a threat for their erasure, because of colonialism, because of it, exploitative practices, because of the onward march, of modernity, there's this, danger that our art forms, could perish. And so I guess I do want to pose that question to the panel more formally, to what extent, is what we do even more important because of the legacy of colonialism? To what extent is what we do a reaction to colonialism? Is there a difference between a reaction and a response? How do we see our relationship to, I guess, the history of colonialism and, just threats of erasure in general, for our culture and our cultural art forms?
I'd like to start with that because, interestingly enough, the kind of tradition that I practice was actually a direct result of colonialism. Like, it didn't exist before that. So when European colonizers arrived in the Americas and they brought enslaved people to the Americas, to the Gulf of Mexico, more specifically to the port of Veracruz, where the state where my tradition comes from, that's when this tradition, song heritage, started. And that's where, as you mentioned before, Darian, the blend of Spanish elements, indigenous elements, and the African elements got together and created this tradition. So my tradition is a result of that, and it has been evolving ever since. For a couple of centuries, it stayed a certain way with certain protocols, certain elements, and it stayed sort of contained geographically and also socially, because it was practiced only by rural communities. And then the tradition was in danger of disappearing, not because of colonialism, but because of capitalism. Because a lot of the performers and the bearers of the tradition started leaving their rural communities in looking for better jobs, moving to cities, and for trying to look more, better financial situations. So the tradition was in danger of disappearing because of that, because socially, all the members, the practitioners were like just going away. So capitalism was more of a threat to what I do than colonialism. And I do think that right now, what we do is a reaction to that, because most of the people who practice this tradition we are not from that region. We do not come from that cultural and social background. We come from all over the world, other parts of Mexico, other parts of the United States. Even in Japan, they practice this style of music. It's Japanese dance, practicing this all over the Americas, in Europe. So it speaks to, as Sachiyo said earlier, about our humanity, about what we want to share, about sharing our experiences and what makes living wonderful and sharing with other people wonderful, which is dance and celebrations. So I think that in my case, it's more about capitalism than colonialism. But certainly, I see it more right now as a reaction. Back to you.
Darian speaking here. That's so interesting. As a reaction to capitalism, I think it's interesting to think about capitalism and colonialism as two different things. I think I tend to conflate the two things together. Probably because I see them both as kind of stemming from a common source, which is kind of greed and exploitation. So I haven't, I rarely think about the two separately from one another. But that's a really, it's really interesting to think about the two as separate, and to think, that this art form specifically, is responding to kind of like economic pressures, to move away and, find other opportunities outside of rural spaces. Let's see, anyone else want to pick up on this idea of what you do as in some way being a response to colonialism or the threat of erasure?
I would like to respond to that. I think that a lot of what we do in terms of, the traditional African dance and just Black dance in general, it's both a response as well as a rebirth. But I think that rebirth was triggered by responding to oppression. For example, in the 1960s 60s, we had a movement, the Black Freedom Movement of the 1960s. And a big part of that movement was the legacy of Kawaida, which is a philosophical initiative that had major influence on Black arts, and especially. And what Kawaida, it is a self-consciously Afrocentric philosophy that encourages ongoing dialogue with African culture, seeking answers to the fundamental issues that confront African people specifically, as well as humanity in general. And it makes us look back so that we can move forward, and we grab our strengths from from our ancestors and those people whose shoulders that we stand on, and find our direction in moving forward. And part of that is regaining the things that have been lost. That's what folklore is. That was an expression, I think, that came up in the the mid 1800s, in the 1840s. Folk meaning community. Law was an ancient word from the English dialect, LAR, that means education and learning. So we are re-educating ourselves about our community. And that's what folklore is. It's keeping the culture alive. And I think a lot of that is in response to this erasure that we have experienced and are beginning to see happen again across the board. That's it for my thought.
Yes, Darian here. Oh, Sahi, you wanted to respond? Go ahead.
Yes, Sahi here. I just wanted to build on that. It's really interesting for me to hear all of this because Indian dance comes from a particular place where it's got some dual things going on. In the 50s, when India was fighting for independence, the dance forms that I practice now were used as representations of why our culture was equivalent to British and white culture, so to speak, European culture. And in doing so, we actually made the platforms of women's bodies one of the places where we kind of fought against the war, like the cultural side of things. So a lot of what we see now for Indian dance is a massive reaction to that point in time in our history. So even the term classical versus folk for us, classical was able to compete with ballet and with all of those beautiful things that we were seeing in Europe. And then folk became sort of relegated to this term, which I actually don't know if I align with anymore. That was just sort of not as expansive in terms of vocabulary or as, took as much training, so on and so forth. So from there, we also now are kind of on this space over here where the direct impact of some of that is you're almost trying to figure out within your culture, what did we remove when we were in that sort of fight against the British? And what are we sort of over exaggerating in nowadays in the form as well? And then here in the US, you have this alternative layer where you still want to also make sure that you're not messing with traditions in the way that they've been taught to you. So I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but I'm just saying that there are multiple layers with which we are reacting. And our goal now as practitioners, I think, is to see what are the reactions and what has been lost and what needs to be found again. All these rebirth and things coming together in a pattern that allows us to find ourselves again at the base root of it is what we're all trying to do. Find ourselves through our arts again. So that's the unique place, I guess, that the Indian art form is sort of coming from at this moment in time. And that's my thoughts on the matter.
Oh my God, this is such fascinating stuff. Let's see, does anyone else want to pick up on this idea of colonialism and how it's affected your practice, or we can also move on. This is this is such a fascinating idea. This distinction between folk, and classical. When we think about the response to colonialism, unpacking that more, what exactly has that response been? What are we responding to, and how have we been responding? On and you raise this interesting idea, Sahi, in terms of the body. What bodies specifically have been, I guess, the canvases on which, that response, has been created. All these are very, very fascinating ideas. And I see that, we've actually, nearly an hour has elapsed, up to this point. So I want to think about, I want to move the conversation, in a slightly different, direction, to think about some other things. Many of you have mentioned your connection to spirituality, or the connection to spirit or spirituality in your art form. And I'm just curious to know a little bit more about that. What has been the connection in your art form to spirituality or sacred? Some of you have used the term sacred practices. To what extent is it a sacred practice? I mean, we've talked about, the utilitarian value of what it is that we do. We are educators. We are, it is our responsibility to, inform others, about what we do, and, to increase people's capacity for appreciation of other cultures, and self-esteem, and all of these, other things. To what extent is what you do to you sacred or spiritual? And anyone can feel free to chime in here.
I think I could say a little something about that. Well, firstly, it's sacred and spiritual to me personally, because anything that has been passed down through our ancestors is sacred for me. And I think that is so also for many people who are descendants of Africa, because we honor our ancestors, that it's, in a very special kind of way. It's not just a memory, but there's actually some often ancestral worship, so anything that has to do with ancestors becomes very sacred. But also inside of African traditional African music and dance, it has always been it wasn't really originally for performance purposes. It has always been functional. And one of the parts of that function has been religious and spiritual. So you will find a lot of spirituality, a lot of things that go on inside of the dance that is not just for entertainment, but because it has to do with spiritual practices, from everything from encounters with deities to funerals, birth, things that are involved with the spirit world. So in general, traditional African dance, it serves that purpose. And just to step off for a minute into something we were talking about before in terms of performances, for example, one of the earlier ballets that came here to visit us, Les Ballets Africains, which is the national dance company of Guinea. It was one of the first African national dance companies that actually was a performance company, because originally the focus of that, it became to promote traditional African dance and culture around the world. And some of the indigenous people, they were in opposition to that because the dance to them and the music and the dance was sacred and not something that you just perform. It's something that you participate in, something that is revered, something that is spiritual on many planes. So those are my thoughts about spirituality and African dance.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that, Sewaa. Darian here speaking. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Myself, being a teacher now of African dance, I find that I can't even teach without having a conversation about the spiritual function of dance, and the spiritual elements, of it. It's so central to the dance styles, that I teach. And, as you bring up, by virtue of the fact that these are things that are handed down from our ancestors from generation to generation to generation, makes them sacred. And I think that this is, if we really consider this idea and really meditate on it, it can really be an idea that's a paradigm shift, right? Because I think in our present culture, we think of things that are older as things that are that have fallen into obsolescence. They're useless to us. We're moving on to the new thing. It's the new thing that is the shiny thing, that is the desirable thing. But for us to switch back to think, no, it's those old things, those things that have been preserved. Those are the things that we should think of as, more than shiny and new and entertaining and interesting, but actually sacred. And I think that's a really important idea for us all to think about. But let's see, who else has some thoughts on this idea of spirituality and what you do? Sachiyo.
Well, I think any countries, or I shouldn't generalize, most of the countries, performance, theater, music, and dance began as a dedication to divine beings and spirits, and it was sacred. It has been. And with the history comes on, it became, so we performed for the God or divine being and people in the back. Now we perform for the people in the front as an entertainment. It has changed. But we still carry on as an artist and dancer here that the performance is sacred. So in Japanese performing arts, the stage is sacred area because that's where we perform for the gods. And like dance fans used to be that something we say carry is the medium for a dancer, simple dancer or human being to transform her or himself to a divine being. So it is the space, sacred area. A dancer can change, transform, like a shaman, from just a person and to the divine being and bless the land where we receive stuff of our living, the grains, and then bless the people that no calamities in the nature. We are all healthy and peace of the land. And the dancers and also musicians, they're the ones that have taken on for spread the happiness of the people through the performance. And now in the modern time, I feel that I tell my students, it's so fortunate we can perform this. We can share the beautiful Japanese dance with the audience and with students and together that we can. It is really fortunate. It is like a miracle that has come down thousands of years. But for modern in our studio, everybody has to take shoes off. And then before entering, so our shoes outside, and then wear heavy socks, and then the sacred area we clean and bow on the floor, bow down on the floor. So our studio has to be really clean because this is the sacred area. But it's not easy to teach. When I go, I'm sure and everybody goes to schools, and it is so dirty. I have to teach them those things. And you know what? There's a way to show them you can minimize, you don't want to work so hard. If you make it dirty, really, you have to work hard. So let's make it clean. As I say, this is a great area for us to perform. But keep saying that it's not easy, and it's my confession. And performance I dedicate to audience, and then they get to the back where if not me, not as myself, but somebody else who dances there on stage, not just Sachiyo is doing. I should forget myself. It is something more. But this is idealism, and I hope to be the one that is not a person, but expression or the message from your heart that communicate. If you can reach audience through it, that would be great. This medium of dance, vehicle voice, but not all the time we can. We just have to do our best in educating people about sacredness of performance. We just have to make efforts. It's not, I have to keep trying. Thank you.
Oh, wow. What a powerful idea. I think, I don't know, I think, listening to you, Sachiyo, and listening to you, Sewaa, talk about the spiritual dimensions of dance have given me personally kind of a new lease on what it is that I do. In the short time that I have had the privilege of listening to you speak, which is why it's so important, that we do learn, from our elders. This idea of performing for the gods, and then performing for people as being kind of secondary, or, from a chronological standpoint, something that came after, but kind of the performing for the gods and for sacred purposes as being the primary functionality of dance. Such a powerful idea, the stage as being, sacred, the performance space, as being sacred. I think this is an idea that can be carried into so many other dimensions of life, your workspace, being sacred, your home being a sacred space. And thinking about, I don't know, I mentioned the term paradigm shift, but there's so much of what you all have already said so far that could be a complete paradigm shift for the way that we operate in the modern world. But who else wants to pick up on this idea of the connection between spirituality and artistic practice? Okay, Paula.
Well, in what I do, the tradition is closely tied to religion in the sense that it has specific functions. It has social functions, but also the music, the dance has religious functions as well. Is closely ties to the Catholic religion, and in fact, some of the celebrations we have take place on important Catholic days. In fact, the most important celebration where we perform this style of music and dance happens on the day of a saint, like El Día de la Candelaria. So it has that very close relationship to religion. And here in New York, most people who practice this style of dance do not even practice Catholicism. So that's a little bit of the paradox. But the spirituality comes from being together and creating something spontaneously, improvising, and something that, as I said before, it's a reaction to capitalism because we are not making enough money. We're not producing anything to to create goods. We're just being together for free, having fun, creating something that will not be repeated again. And that's very powerful for a lot of people, because here in our modern world where everything is so individualized, it's an opportunity to come together, meet other people, communicate their eyes with a body language, and that's very spiritual as well. And going back to something that Sewaa mentioned about carrying the spiritual aspect of carrying something that has been around for generations. I remember the first time that I went back to Mexico to learn more about this tradition from the elders of the community. And I met these gentlemen and older women, and these are people who live off the land in rural communities, who have nothing to their name, who basically survive day by day. And you approach them and they look at you and they say, sure, I share with you everything I know. Everything that my father, my grandparents gave me was just this music. This is everything that they left to me, and I'm giving it to you. And I remember the first time I went, I was sobbing nonstop, because I was like, this is everything this person has, the knowledge that his father, his grandfather gave him, and he's given it to me. And someone who comes from another side of the country, and he doesn't know what I'm going to do with this. So for me, that's the spiritual connection to this, knowing that I am in something that was in a specific social and cultural place. Now I have to use it and adapt it for my own needs, and I have to really be respectful of what they taught me and try to do my best with it. So I think that for me, that's the spiritual connection to it. Trying to, as some of you said before, be a link to something bigger than you, to your ancestors, even if they are not direct ancestors, but the people who were before you, and they were trying to do beautiful things and creating moments with the community. Even if it's a different community, in a different country, in a different language, but you're still creating and sharing that purpose of sharing and just, enjoying life together.
Oh yes, so many powerful ideas in what you said, Paula, and you make a connection. There's a connection between what you said and what Sewaa said earlier about what you do being sacred by virtue of the fact that it was handed down, and so that imbues it with a sense of spirituality. You talk about this idea of just coming together, being in the moment and improvising together as being something that's inherently spiritual. I think about, this idea all the time, and how, if you are dancing, if you're improving, well, you kind of have to go to a spiritual place. I mean, there's no way that you can premeditate every single movement that you do, whether you're a dancer or a musician. So that seems to be, I don't know, a necessity, for what it means to truly dance, is to connect to a spiritual source. Let's see, would anyone else like to pick up on this idea of the connection between dance and spirituality? What you do? Okay. All right. Well, my God, can you all believe that we have fewer than 20 minutes remaining in this panel? I have lots of other questions that I've prepared, but I think I want to give an opportunity to our audience, to ask questions. I already see that there are some here. Let's see. Okay. This question is from Poetry. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's to our panelists. Did you face any difficulty in asserting the dance tradition that you were bringing into the United States or into the society of the United States? Yes, go ahead, Sahi.
Sahi here, and the answer is 100% yes, absolutely. For so many reasons, from just finding a space, because we're here in Manhattan and, you know, neighbors, noise, etc. And we're a stamping, grounded, earthy style, which a lot of styles outside the US are. It was very difficult to find neighbors that would allow us to do the artwork we needed to do. In addition to that, obviously, you're looking at things like the students that you're teaching being so removed from their culture that all they want to do is ballet, modern dance, other styles, and you have to convince them as the teacher that the style that they are learning heritage-wise is worthy of their time, attention, and energy. That's a big one that to this day, until you establish a practice where the community looks up to it, you're convincing every day, parents and students alike, to want to do this style with you, and keep it alive. And then I think you've got, you know, your usual gender issues, racial issues, all of those combine to make what I think every cultural bearer, traditional arts teacher, traditional arts performer faces in the US, which is a lot of work to get it off the ground and get the respect that the style deserves and you as the teacher deserve. That's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, wow. Yeah, just convincing people, you know, of the value of what it is that you do or the utility of it. Yeah, that yeah, that's certainly something that I have or that I face every day, you know, as a teacher, especially, you know, in a university setting. I mean, you know, I experience students who are um on the university level, you know, what I experience sometimes are individuals who are being polite, you know, they're going along, you know, with what's happening. Um, I see that they are working toward, you know, receiving a grade, you know, but I don't necessarily all the time, you know, see that personal, visceral investment, you know, in the content itself. And so I feel that same need myself sometimes. But see, I think who else wants to pick up on this idea of kind of obstacles that you have faced, you know, bringing your art form to U.S. audiences?
Oh, I would like to say, this is Sewaa. Just very briefly, because I know we're running out of time, but I find that in general, there's a failure to seek out, hire, and promote and fairly compensate artists that are in that category that we have placed in, which is called folk. And there continues to be, you know, social inequities reflected in the funding practices of private philanthropy and government funders in the arts. And as performing artists in traditional African dance, a lot of times we don't get the, you know, the respect, even in terms of the way that people's view of us. Sometimes when we are looking through people who want to hire us, we get that, you know, the explanation is that they are looking for something that is primitive. They want us to be primitive. You know, what is primitive? You know, but this is all discriminatory practices. And I have, you know, we face that on a daily basis.
Wow, primitive, really? Wow, and people are still using that language. You know, I mean, you would think that we would have been beyond that. I don't know, that was like 30, 40 years ago. But, you know, to think that, you know, that's still the expectation, you know, whatever people's fantasy of, you know, indigenous art forms are, that's what they're willing to fund.
Well,
Yeah,
no, they're not trying to fund that. I'm saying that people who want us to perform, they
oh,
want
perform.
something primitive. You know, they want you to jump around and, you know, squeak like monkeys and, you know, make sure that we come out there with limited number, you know, limitations on what we wear. You know, it's the idea, still the perception of what is Africa. or who are African people. But it's not really that shocking, because what you think might have happened 30, 40 years ago, is still happening. As a matter of fact, it's escalating.
Mm. Absolutely. That's a tremendously, great point. It is certainly escalating. I have literally been requested to give a performance, and they wanted the dancers to wear loincloths, and feathers on their heads.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. See, who else wants to speak to this idea of challenges you have faced bringing what you have to offer to U.S. audiences specifically?
Interestingly, I think it's also Sahi here. Sorry, just a quick insert. It's also that the people who are from the culture want you to kind of teach the culture quickly. Can you just teach my kids a little bit of Indian culture? Like, here, I'm putting them in the dance class, and now I want them to know everything about their history in a class 1 hour once a week. So it's a double-edged sword everywhere, I think, from all sides of it, to be so far removed from the space where it was birthed.
Yeah, absolutely. See, anyone else? Sachiyo.
Well, I want to continue Sahi's thought. Yes, in this modern time, particularly America, people think everything quick. But for us artists, we all know art learning is lifelong till we drop dead. So it takes time. In Japan, it takes 10 years to be able to walk properly. But we have to hasten in this pace to teach them more in organized techniques so people can learn. But I think we just have to keep trying to educate people through our art form, the medium, what about our culture is. And it's not what they might think, but I want you to understand through this. And giving performance a space, just as I talked about sacred area, we clean, we just go on this. And here, like one of the college, it's great, gentleman comes with mop, but with shoes on. It's totally different idea. This is sacred area for us. It's just one of the pieces that cultural differences. But I smiled, and that ended up me doing mock dance. So we have to, even a small part of something that they don't understand, we try. And of course, there are social situations they just complete it out. But we just have to keep on going and smile that, in any profession, this difficulty comes around, but we have a mission to, transmit each of them, Paula and Lucina and Sahi, beautiful arts to people. Just have to keep trying it regardless of difficulties.
Thank you for sharing, Sachiyo. Would anyone else like to chime in on this question? Anyone else? Yeah.
I would like to say something very, very quickly. I have faced similar challenges as my fellow panelists here, but also the fact that, yes, like what I do is very easy to get started. You learn a few steps, you learn a few chords in the instrument, you learn a few verses, and you're in the party, you're dancing, you're contributing. But it takes many years and a lot of practice to become good at even minimally good at this. So that's something that people sometimes don't understand, that yes, it's very easy to join the practice, but if you're really committed, you have to dedicate the time, you have to dedicate resources and effort to it. It's not just, it's simple, it's very simple, just follow the beat and you're it. No, you have to put in the effort and learn the history and learn the functions and learn, how we relate to each other in this particular context, why we're doing things this way. It's not just going and dance. Sure, you can do that. But if you really want to enjoy it and be called a bearer of the tradition, then you really have to invest yourself and make the commitment to it. So that's something that sometimes people lack, the commitment to really honor this heritage and the right way, by giving it the time. And as I said before, giving it the time implies that you're not getting anything financially out of it, just your own personal growth and the growth of the community. And that's a reaction to modern times. So that's why I think a lot of these traditions are so attractive to a lot of people in so-called developed countries. Thank you.
Yes, this idea of investment and commitment to it, and it taking time, to really cultivate this craft, or your craft. And you're right, in U.S. audiences, people are not, always welcoming, to that sense of process, that it takes to really, understand what it is that you do. So we have about 3 minutes remaining. Yeah, can you believe it? We have about 3 minutes remaining, and I'm trying to think about, how we can, make the best use of our short time together. When we just had a we just had a conversation about things taking time to do them right, and now we're pressed for time. Well, this has been an amazing panel. I feel like I could talk to you all for another 5 or 6 hours. There's just so much you and I'm sure our audience would benefit from learning. I guess I'll just open it up. Are there any, maybe you can all go around and tell us what you're working on now, and where people can find you. Let's see whoever wants to start.
Oh, okay. Please join us at the Washington's National Cherry Blossom Festival. We are performing on April 3rd, and in New Jersey, Bloom Fest on April 10th. And also my senior programs in the Greenwich House, sponsored by Sukasa program, Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. Everybody on the wheelchair, welcome. And we practice dance band. We use our hand motions. And then, so this is for everybody beyond 65 in my age, and we're going to make poetry and share the it's poetry and dance of Japan. If you're interested, come and visit dancejapan.com. It's been great time to learn everybody's history and how you came in the dance form in just a short time. I want to learn more. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Sachiyo. Okay, who else wants to share? We have a few seconds. Who else wants to share what's happening?
Oh, yes.
I can speak about our upcoming Juneteenth celebration. Juneteenth is a celebration of the abolition of slavery in the United States. It'll be our 12th annual Juneteenth celebration at Restoration Plaza. It's an all-day event. It's free to the public. There are dance classes from all different genres. There's a marketplace. There are performances by professional and local artists. There's a children's zone with all kinds of activities. There's a dance music celebration, a house music celebration, excuse me, that we end the day with. All kinds of activities free to the public. Just come on out and enjoy. That is June 18th from 12 to 8 o'clock, free to the public. It's on the street and it's inside the plaza. It's an all-day event.
All right, thank you. Okay, who else in the last few seconds? What's happening?
Sahi here. You can find us at navatman.org, Navatman. And we just put out actually a feature film, a movie on the Mahabharata that features Indian arts, spoken word, theater, And you can check it out online and rent it at any point in time that you'd like. It just won 2 film festival awards, so we're very excited.
Oh, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, Paula.
This is Paula. Well, you can find us in my group is Son Pecadores, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, social media. I'm also one of the lead organizers of the annual festival of Son Jarocho here in New York. And you can find us on Son Jarocho NY on all social media. Our festival takes place in late November. This year is going to be in Queens, so we hope you can join us. We have bands from all over the East Coast coming to visit and share their music and their dance with us. So yes, follow us and learn more about what we do. We wait for you.
And can I briefly say that KowTeff can be found at KowTeff.org. KowTeff.org, and you can find us. We have a website. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook as well.
All right. Well, this has been a riveting panel discussion. Thank you all so much, and thank you to our audience for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to more conversations, and make sure that you support the rest of the conference, which is going to be, just as wonderful and fascinating. All right. And so at this point, I will turn it back over to our facilitators.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to Paula, Sachiyo, Sahi, Sewaa, and Darian for this amazing conversation. I know that I learned a lot. I have a lot to think about. To everyone here attending, I hope that you were also able to take away some transformative ideas and new thoughts into consideration. I want to say another thank you to our sponsors, Jamie Pellegrino from the Visicardi Center, and Michael Mile and Ali Paduno from SignNexus for their invaluable support in signing. We are heading over to the session follow-up chat in the community session to take a few more questions and wrap up this conversation. Beyond that, what's next? We have Move Your Bodies in our daily dance break, facilitated and presented by the Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance. That starts now, right after this session. You can continue to experience the symposium by visiting our sponsors at the exhibition hall, by creating virtual meetups and online conversations at our community board, or by taking some resting time away from your screen. Coming up next, we have Life Cycles, Livelihoods, and Legacies, 3 more sessions coming up. There's one at 12 p.m. and then 3 more held at 2:30 p.m. At 1:30, you can take your lunch and or head over to the exhibitor hall for the virtual expo showcase. The virtual expo showcase will also be live at 5 p.m. with more presentations from various sponsors. Tonight's program includes a pivotal keynote conversation entitled Disabled Artists and a History of Dance, Activism, and Collective Care, an address by Corbett O'Toole about the evolution of dance, activism, and an ethos of collective care in the United States. What can dance artists today learn from investigating this rich history? This presentation will be followed by a response session with the Dance NYC Disability Dance Artistry Residency Artist, curated with X. That's all of our announcements to end the call, so have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining today's session. A special thanks to our funders, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, the Howard Gilman Foundation, New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. A special thanks to our lead corporate sponsor, Con Edison, and our lead dance advocate, Jody Gottfried Arnold. Subsidies for the education and dance worker ticket tiers are made possible by the Arnold Foundation. A special thanks to our leader, host, and partner level sponsors, 92nd Street Y, Harkness Dance Center, Dance Education Library, Cataliotti Law, Full Out Creative, Gibney Dance Center, Kumbe Center for African and Diaspora Dance, the Actors Fund, Ballet Hispanico, Fit for Dance, Nai Ni Chin Dance Company, NDI Collaborative for Teaching and Learning, New York Live Arts, and Tom O'Connor Consulting Group. And last, but certainly not least, a special thanks to our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion partners: Art Beyond Sight, Art Space Sanctuary, Asian American Arts Alliance, Center for Traditional Music and Dance, the International Association of Blacks in Dance, Lotus Music and Dance, Museum Arts and Culture Access Consortium, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, New York Foundation for the Arts, and Women of Color in the Arts. Up next, at 12 o'clock, we begin our early afternoon sessions. At 1:30, you may eat your lunch and visit our virtual expo showcase in our exhibitor hall. At 2:30, we begin our late afternoon sessions, and at 4:15, we gather in our daily debrief. At 5 o'clock, we revisit the exhibitor hall for more booth activity at our virtual expo showcase. And at 6 o'clock, we gather for our keynote presentation. Stay connected with us by posting your takeaways on social media using the hashtags DanceSimp, DanceNYC 2022, and DanceSimp 2022. On Instagram at dance.nyc, on Twitter at dance.nyc, and on Facebook at dance/NYC. Some features not to miss: build your agenda of sessions, connect with other attendees, join community conversations, visit the exhibitor hall. Don't forget to check out the 2022 Symposium Digital Program Book. How are we doing? Did you like a session? Use the like feature on your favorite session. Got feedback for us? Take the post-event survey after March 19th and tell us how we did. Need help? Email us at customerservice@dance.nyc. A special thanks to our broadcast streaming partners at Full Out Creative. Thanks for joining. Keep in touch at dance.nyc.